Welcome to the South Metro Regional Chamber of Commerce event, A New Leash on Life. I'm Julia Maxton, president of the South Metro Chamber. And for the past 5 years, this chamber has honored first responders and veterans. We are currently forming a chamber business-to-business group of veteran-owned business people. In honor of our respect for veterans, police, and fire, we bring you this special event. During the next year, we will be campaigning to raise $25,000 to buy another service dog like Star. These dogs come from Canine for Warriors down in Florida, and they are rescue dogs trained to partner with their veteran partner. Our dog's registered name, in honor of the Oregon victims, is Dayton. So we urge you to keep in touch with us, and if you're interested in donating towards this new dog, we would love to have you help us raise the money.
Captain Louis served in the Army for 9 years. He worked as a psychological operations specialist and military police officer during his time there. He was honorably discharged as a captain in 2015 after serving tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Louis suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury after his deployments and had decided to pursue a treatment plan involving a canine when medication and counseling didn't completely solve the issues or failed. Louis and Star were paired together by Canines for Warriors, the largest canine veteran pairing organization in the United States, a nonprofit organization out of Florida that connects service dogs with veterans suffering from the same thing Louis does. Louis has worked as a paramedic in the local communities for the past 13 years. He currently works at Hanco EMS in Findlay, Ohio, and as a paramedic in Putnam County EMS in Ottawa, Ohio. Star is also very comforting to certain patients on the squad calls. Star is his sidekick, a 4-year-old golden retriever. Louis and Star are side by side every day. They are never apart. Star works on the ambulance with him and is constantly attending to Louis' needs. Star is the first dog in the country to actively work on an ambulance with her handler. Since Star works on the ambulance, she is also cross-trained to track and search for people in case they have a lost victim when they respond to a call. Louis and Star have been featured in a film documentary that was produced by DNA Films, following their day-to-day activities along with 2 other graduates of the over 550 graduate canine teams that have gone through the program. The film has won 4 Emmy Awards and 3 Telly Awards. Please welcome Captain Louis B.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. I just want to, first of all, thank everybody for being here. I hope that you take something out of it today. We are going to be showing the part of the film. So the film is on Amazon Prime, Starsit. If you want to watch it later, we're going to be showing a 20-minute segment. And then they also just released a episode of Rescue to Service. So basically 90% of their dogs are rescue dogs. So they go to the kill shelters and they say, I want that one, that one, that one. They go through a series of tests, and if they don't pass the test, they find homes for them. So either way, the dog is saved. And if they pass the test, then they go on to be a service dog. So 90% of the dogs that they get are rescues. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the film, and then I'm going to give you a presentation on everything, and then we'll do what everybody really wants to see, a demonstration with Star. I'm very comfortable with everything that has happened to me and that I talk about, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I would rather you ask me about PTSD than having somebody that has PTSD and not sure how to handle the situation and ask them. So please ask me anything you would like. We're going to go ahead and start with the video. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you back here in about 20 minutes.
Dear Star, a year and a half ago, you had no idea who I was, nor did I know you. I didn't know your background or where you came from, and you had no idea about my checkered past. I decided to join the military thinking that I could defend this nation and our people. Little did I know that deployments would change my life forever. After coming home, I was a changed person. There was not one thing that left me battling PTSD. It was all the pieces together that put my life in danger on a daily basis. Falling into some very dark times, sleepless nights, and dangerous situations. I sought to stop these issues on my own and hide it from any loved one I had. Life as I had known it was gone. I was a broken person trying to recover, and recovery was much bigger than what I could ever do for myself. That's when I found Canines for Warriors, where you were training to do a job for someone like me, but not knowing that it was I you would be connected with. Then I met you, Star. I was scared and anxious of what might happen, but the minute I met you, I knew my life would be different.
Brace.
Yes. No.
You just had that look of reassurance, determination, and strength, like you were saying, I got this, follow me, let me be your rock, and you will be okay.
Our military is the best in the world. We have an amazing military, but we haven't been able to take care of our kids when they come home. We owe that to them. Everybody in this United States owes that to them because they have sacrificed so much. Not just them, their families, their children, their wives, their aunts, their uncles, their moms, and their dads. It's a trickle-down effect, and they come home and they're broken. So at Canines for Warriors, we fix them.
Anybody need any Kleenex? Raise your I'm just teasing. Don't watch the movie then if you cry too much. The other two people that you saw in the film, the woman that had her dog, her name's Shiloh, she's in the movie, and her dog is Javi. Adam is the other gentleman, the redhead, and he lives in New York. She lives in Arkansas, and his dog is Molly. And she is, I don't know if you noticed, but she's a part golden, part wolfhound. And so she has a beard that's pretty long. And you'll actually see a couple pictures of her so you can see it. I'm about to show a video that is about 3 minutes long. This can be very sensitive in nature, especially if you're dealing with PTSD. This gives you a real good depiction of what it's like and how a service dog can help or maybe save somebody's life. So I'm going to show you that now.
Did you hear that?
Dad!
Hey, oh, that's a tight squeeze. It would do me good to spend time with you guys, like we used to.
Yeah, but I want you back on your meds, Keith.
You make me too lethargic, Denise. I can figure this out on my
That's the
own.
deal. I want you back at Dr. Holterman's, and I want you back on your meds until you're completely better.
Mom, Dad, look what I found. Come here. Mom, can I take him home?
RJ, you know what? That's not a good idea, okay? It could be dangerous.
I think he's fine.
Hey, Keith.
Mom, I promised to take care of him.
I know, I just... Your dad can, like, call shelter.
We died for you, Maureen. Did you hear that?
Dad,
I don't know what's gotten in that head of yours.
Look, if you're worried about RJ taking care of him, I'll come over every day. I can feed him. I just kind of feel like it would be better if I could see you guys a little more often.
I don't want him around our son.
Whatever you got against me, don't take it out on the dog, okay? That dog's
Oh my
been through a
God,
lot. He
Keith,
deserves
it's
a little
not
bit better, and
just
that's my
about the
birthday
dog.
present to our son.
My son is my only priority. And you know what? He should be yours too.
Is your gun ready, Sergeant? Maybe you can hear it this time.
I'm sorry.
You got that? Stay right here.
Dad! Mom! Dad!
Come on, it's me. Talk to me. Keith, please. I need you to put down the gun, okay?
Oh, help me.
You and your mom are gonna take me to the hospital right now. Stay there for a while until I get better.
Well, when are you gonna come home?
I don't know yet. But I promise you, I'm gonna figure it out. I'll be home as soon as I can.
Anybody have more Kleenex? Need more Kleenex for that one? That's a tough one to watch, but it's a good depiction of what it's like. A lot of times with PTSD, especially coming home from a combat zone for a veteran, it's not uncommon for you to develop PTSD symptoms 6 months to a year later, and then you're dealing with it for the rest of your life. For first responders, you know, we deal with it every day. We go to tragic events that normal human beings should never have to experience, and normal human beings should never have to see. You know, it's always difficult to be in EMS or as a first responder, police officer, because you have to continue to serve the public after you get affected by something. So, you know, you go out on a call and it's a tough one, and then right after that, you get a call for, you know, maybe a little old lady that fell and just needs help up. And you're already stressing and dealing from the first call. So it's very common to develop PTSD in the first responder environment, but it's very frowned upon to talk about it. And that's one of the things that I want to express today, is that we need to not be afraid to talk about it. Veterans, you know, back in World War I and World War II, you had your grandma, grandpa, or maybe your dad or your mom talk about those times, and you approach them to talk about it, they were like, well, I don't want to talk about it. And that's even common today. But now we're starting to open up more and more, and that's what we need to do, is we need to open up more and talk about it. Every time I do a speech like this, it's therapeutic for me too, because I get to talk about it. Even though it's difficult, it lets me de-stress from those situations, but also remember what others may be going through, because I went through it myself. So if you know anybody that's dealing with PTSD, and maybe, you know, a four-legged friend like Star here would be a good asset. Down. So if you noticed, I was facing you guys and she was moving. Star, leave it. And that's how she alerts me. You don't see that very often on stage. And you notice how she didn't move. She just barked and growled to make sure that I knew somebody was there. She took it as possibly a threat, so she notified me right away by barking. That's something you don't typically see when I'm on stage. So I'm glad you guys got to see that. Just please don't come behind me. So, good girl, Star. See, she's still got her eyes. So if you know somebody that's struggling and you think that this might be an option, or you can go to the website or you can call me. I'd be happy to talk to you or a family member, friend, whatever, that might be interested or just needs help. So please don't hesitate to talk about it, is what I really want to stress. So this is just a little bit about my background. We'll get into this now. I was in the military for 9 years. I was honorably discharged as a captain. I originally was enlisted, and then I went through Bowling Green ROTC while I was enlisted. I worked in psychological operations, and I worked as a military police officer, deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I received my paramedic certification in 2007. I started in fire and EMS at the age of 19 as a volunteer firefighter in a small department outside of Bowling Green, and I deployed to Hurricane Katrina as a paramedic. I was the only paramedic for the general population in Pearlington, Mississippi, if anybody's heard of that. That was ground zero for Hurricane Katrina. So where New Orleans got flooded, Pearlington had basically stairs leading up to no houses. So that was an eye-opening experience as well. It got so bad with people down there that when we went on calls, they were actually looting the station. So we actually had to have the military come and stand by at the station to make sure that nobody took our stuff while we were gone. I mean, they even took hoses off the trucks, so it was pretty bad. And so I worked as a firefighter paramedic down there. I worked as a critical care medic and a flight medic for 2 years prior to getting STAR. When I got STAR, it didn't really make much sense to continue to work as a flight medic because she's not going to go on the helicopter, let's be honest. So there was just no room for her in there, and the only time that we would have utilized her was for search and rescue. So I went back down to the ground as a paramedic, and I applied to Putnam County EMS where they hired me, and so I work there now, 24 on, 72 off, and then I work at Hanco EMS in Findlay as well, if anybody knows. So this is just a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. Hypervigilance was my biggest issue, like I talked about in the film. And if anybody knows what hypervigilance is, it's just basically being aware of your surroundings and responding to noises or other people in a very odd way. I was very hypervigilant because I specifically had somebody attack me with razor blades, and I actually got my arm cut up so bad that every time I looked at my arm, I would have flashbacks. So somebody suggested to get a tattoo. That's what I did. Anyways, panic attacks, anxiety, those type of things. Depression, nightmares, sleepwalking, those are all very common issues. Memory loss. I have a very short-term memory, so if you say your name to me, I might forget it. I'm sorry. You might have to repeat it to me like 5 or 6 times, but I will get it eventually. I forget things all the time, and my wife hates it, and she thinks I use it as a crutch, but that is not true. So nightmares, like I said, very common. Suicidal thoughts or actions. I think everybody dealing with PTSD goes through depression or suicidal thoughts at some point in their life. Honestly, I feel that any combat veteran that comes from combat coming home is affected by PTSD in one way or another, regardless of what you did in that combat zone. It doesn't matter if you're behind a desk or if you're out in the city the entire time working. But I feel like anybody that comes home definitely comes back a changed person and has some type of PTSD related to that. Personally, I worked as a military police officer in psychological operations, so I was always out in the cities working with the Iraqi police, military police, the military in general, the Army, once they left Saddam's control. And we actually lived in one of Saddam's torture houses. We made it a bunk room. And he had a tunnel that led down into sort of like a metal room that he would go to in case there was like a big bombing or something like that that happened there. And we turned that into a weight room. So that was pretty interesting. So anyways, something that you might not know with PTSD, a lot of people don't know morning sickness is a very common sign or symptom of PTSD. I have woken up before in the morning and been very nauseated to the point where I had to take medication, or I'd be running to the toilet to vomit. So it's very common, and I still get that today, unfortunately. Medication and illegal drug use and alcohol abuse, those are very common things that we see because veterans or first responders are putting basically a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery. It's just not gonna work. So they turn to these things to just stop it for the time being. And obviously it's not what we wanna see. A lot of heroin overdoses that we see were upstanding individuals that were maybe veterans or first responders, and they couldn't deal with their stresses anymore, so they turned to illegal drugs. And then we have all these other ones. When I came back from overseas, I was a much angrier person. Things set me off a lot easier, and it's been very difficult because I don't think of myself as an angry person. And you probably, if you met me, you probably wouldn't think that I would get angry very easily. But it's little things that just I can't control, and people that have PTSD can't control. Survivor's guilt, if you've ever heard of that, basically dealing with the fact that you came home and maybe your buddies didn't, or you were injured, or they were injured and you weren't. That's always difficult to deal with. Flashbacks and visions. At night, I would have a lot of flashbacks. Star wakes me up from nightmares in the middle of the night. And I also sleepwalk a lot. And it was to the point before we had our child, Silvio, it was to the point that we actually had to baby-proof the house because of me. Because I was getting into drawers, grabbing weapons, and ending up in the corner of the house somewhere. So when Star came along, the way that service dogs work specifically through this program, if you've never been told how they work off of scent changes. So their nose is very sensitive. And that's how they're able to search for people and things like that, by their nose. As humans, we shed 1 million skin cells a minute. You don't know that, you don't see it, but it happens. So the way that I always explain it is, if you've ever had that feeling inside of nervousness and you get real warm, or maybe even sweaty, like maybe when you're giving a speech or something, that is a common skin cell change. That's an extreme skin cell change. Most of the time, you don't even know that it's happening, and it is. So what she does is she responds to that certain scent. So we see diabetic dogs a lot, seizure dogs. We have a seizure dog in Finley that will put his body underneath the patient's head so it doesn't hit the ground when she's having a seizure. And he also calls 911. He has a button that he hits and it calls us. It's an activated 911 button. So we know It's dog activated 911 call. This is the only dog that does that in Findlay, so we know exactly where it is. So that's, something that's very unique and easy to train to do. But anyways, going back to the skin cell changes, so she smells specific skin cell change for a nightmare. She comes to the side of the bed, paws at my face, wakes me up. It's a different scent when I'm about to sleepwalk. So when I'm about to sleepwalk, she gets up on top of the bed and lays on top of me to prevent me from getting up. Now, there's been a couple times that she didn't pick it up right away, and she is the size that she is, and all Canines for Warriors dogs are that size, because they need to be able to knock down the veteran. So she actually has knocked me down once I have gotten up from sleepwalking, so because my sleepwalking got so dangerous. Unfortunately, it's not fun for me to get knocked down and wake up all of a sudden, but it made my family much more comfortable, especially my wife. So that's kind of how it works. They smell that different change, they see it happen the first time, and then they respond to it thereafter. If I'm stressing out about something, she'll come up to me, nudge me, start licking me. My first PTSD episode was when I was driving down the road and I lost control of the vehicle. I couldn't move my arms. I didn't know where I was at. Like you saw in the film where the vehicles were traveling down the road, that's what I saw. I didn't see what was in front of me. So I was locked up behind the steering wheel and I drove off the road. And luckily I didn't hit anybody else or hit a pole or anything like that. But I was able to snap out of it once I was pretty far off the road, feeling the bumps. And I woke up at that time and stopped the vehicle. But that was my first situation. That was prior to Star. So now Star, what she does, first of all, just having her in the vehicle is enough to distract me. But what she does is if she senses something's coming on, if she smells it, she will actually nudge me or start licking me to pull me back to reality. So physical abuse, we see a lot, causing unnecessary harm to others, isolation or fear when alone. So, being alone is difficult, but sometimes some individuals with PTSD often want to be alone. So you might respond to somebody that hasn't gotten out of bed for like a week straight. And that's happened to me. I didn't want to get out of bed for like a week straight. I would just lay there and I wouldn't eat anything, I wouldn't drink anything. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was just constantly asleep in my bed, just laying there. That's very common for people that are dealing with it. So how can we fix these things? A lot of times we start with communication, counseling. Counseling failed me. It's difficult when the VA puts somebody on the other side of the table that's 24 years old, straight out of college, haven't really experienced anything, and has no idea what I've gone through or can't relate to it. And that's what happened, is I had this young lady on the other side of the table that was, very little experience, didn't really know how to approach talking to me. In fact, I think I scared her. So, it failed me. I never went back to counseling after that. So, a lot of times veterans, first responders, they want to talk to somebody that's been in their shoes and are trustworthy individuals, specifically, somebody that is going to be honest with them. So compassion is another one, just being compassionate towards people that are dealing with this, raising awareness like we're trying to do with you guys today so that you can go and spread the word. Medication, if that works for the individual, I still take some meds today, and then a four-legged friend like Star. So these were my issues post-military life coming back. I was diagnosed with PTSD and a traumatic brain injury. I was considered only 30% disabled by the government because I could function as a human being and hold down a job, which I really didn't have a choice to do when I came home. I had to get a job. I had to go back to work. And so I didn't really have the opportunity to go to the VA and say, you know, this is a struggle for me. So that's why they consider me only 30% disabled with PTSD. I was suffering severe migraines every day. Memory loss, like I talked about. I was abusing medication. My choice of medication was Benadryl. Does anybody know why I would be taking Benadryl? Sleep, right? So some of you might take Benadryl to go to sleep. Common dosage for Benadryl is 25 to 50 milligrams. I was taking upwards of 400 or 500 milligrams a night, not knowing what I was doing. And it still wasn't putting me to sleep, because as soon as I would close my eyes, I'd get a flashback or a vision. And I would think, because my memory loss, I didn't take Benadryl, and that's what helps me sleep, right? So I go back to the bottle and take more Benadryl, and then repeat the cycle. So that's why it ended up being so often. And then we started seeing more and more empty bottles, which was the sign that, I was taking way too much. So when I returned and I was 23 years old, the VA prescribed me all these medications at 23 years old. This is 18 different medications. It is not uncommon for an 18 or 19-year-old veteran to come home and be prescribed anywhere between 12 and 15 different medications at once. That's pretty common. I just wanted to show you how many meds it was taking to be normal. By the way, I only take 3 medications now because of STAR. 92% of people that have gone through the program have reported either completely eliminating medication or decreasing it significantly. Botox, I get Botox injections now every 3 months. So for the females out there that are jealous because I get Botox, I'm just teasing. So anyways, I get Botox injections, and that actually has been the most effective thing. I get 34 injections every 3 months. So they start in my shoulder, they go up behind my ear, in my neck, up behind my ear, across my forehead, underneath my eyeballs, in the center of my forehead between my eyebrows, and then down the other side. So it's quite a process. So some triggers, very common triggers, which you probably have heard, with the fireworks on the 4th of July. That's probably pretty common to hear. Having your back exposed, like Star, barked. Driving was a big issue, and still is sometimes an issue, but Star controls that. Crowds of people, very common. So the reason why crowds of people are triggers is because overseas, especially in combat zones, especially with Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or any type of terrorist group, they like to use humans as shields or use them as they need to. Basically, they would tell, they would kidnap an 18-year-old or something, or a 15 or 12-year-old, and say, if you don't do this for me, I'm going to kill your family. So what are you supposed to do? So they would attack us from crowds of people. So as we would drive through a marketplace or something like that, it wasn't uncommon for convoys to get attacked or shot at from a marketplace, because they knew we wouldn't shoot back into an innocent crowd of people and taking that risk. So that was very common. the unknown, just not knowing what could possibly happen, noises and sounds, objects on the road. So one common thing was that they would put pressure bombs in, if anybody's heard of that. So basically at night they would go dig up the road, put a pressure plate underneath there, and then put the bomb on the side of the road so that when we drove over top of it, it would explode. They used bodies and dogs, so they would cut up a dead body and put a bomb inside of it, hoping that you're gonna stop because we're Americans and we care about people, that we're gonna stop and help that person that's laying on the side of the road not knowing it's deceased. Same thing with dogs. They would use dogs, they would basically take a live dog, cut it open, and put a bomb in it, sew it back up, and release it. And then when it got to where they wanted it to be in a city or near us or whatever, they would detonate the bomb. So you can't really see those things unless you can see the stitches or something like that on the dog. So those were very common things. You know, trash on the side of the roads. So, you know, when you're driving down the road, how often do you see pothole covers, different color cement that is like a patch? Coming home, seeing that all the time, I was swerving, I was going 35 miles an hour on the highway. I was trying to avoid those patches. And how common do you see those things? You know, it's very, very common. Or surrounded by unknown individuals, people you don't know, you're constantly running things through your mind. So people that are bosses in here, that may be safety council members or something, disciplinary discussion can be very difficult with a veteran or a first responder with PTSD because they don't take discipline well. Anger is a very common issue or symptom of PTSD. So you might want to be a little cautionary with these individuals and just kind of be more cautious when talking about it than you would with someone that is not dealing with it. PTSD patients are the most dangerous patients that we can respond to as paramedics or police officers in the civilian world because they're currently going through a manic episode. What I mean by that is they are having a severe attack like you saw in the film, and they don't see you as the individual that's trying to help them. They see you as the person that tried to harm them at some point. So, for instance, the person that hurt me physically, I had seen in other people. And I see that person standing in front of me instead of the person that's actually standing in front of me. So that's why it becomes very dangerous. And not only that, but you know, as military, we're trained to be able to kill somebody with our bare hands. And so now it becomes a very heightened situation. So a lot of times when we respond to PTSD patients, the police officers or EMS personnel are like, hey, Louie, yeah, you go talk to him. You know what you're talking about. Thanks, guys, appreciate it. I would say probably 98% of people that were either in the military or currently in the military carry some type of weapon on them. Maybe it's a little pocket knife, maybe it's a big one, maybe it's a gun. But they often do that because they have been trained to use those things and they want to keep themselves protected. So it's not uncommon for them to have something on them or nearby within arm's length in the room. A lot of times we put, like maybe they're on the couch and we're talking to them, keep coffee table between us and the person. In my case, I use STAR, and I'll show you how I do that with the demonstration. Keep positive conversation, don't lie to them. So, for instance, as a military police officer and a psychological operations specialist, we were trained to be able to tell when somebody's lying to us. if you were to lie to me, I would know it, and I wouldn't take that very well. And a lot of times, people with PTSD want to hear the truth. So, like, if you say that you've been there and you haven't, they take that really offensively. I had a Vietnam veteran that was going through a PTSD episode that I responded to, and I was trying to explain to him, hey man, I understand what you're going through. And he's like, no, you don't. And I'm like, well, actually I do, but if you don't want to believe me, that's okay. Common to be able to have that conversation with someone that's been there is useful. Connect with positive things in their life. So if you see maybe a dog, that's a great positive thing. A lot of people love dogs. So he might want to talk about his dog or her. If you see photos of loved ones, maybe talk about them. But it does get sensitive because it's very common in the military, if you've been deployed to a combat zone, to come back and end up divorced or have marital problems. That's very, very common. So I had a nurse that when I was a flight medic, I was transporting a patient from one hospital to another as a critical patient. And I was taking a report from the nurse. Another nurse came up from behind me. Star was in a cover position. That means she's on my right side facing behind me. She alerted me that somebody was coming up, and the nurse immediately started petting her. And I said, can you please not pet the dog? And she said, well, why? This was the exact conversation. And I said, she's a service dog, she's working, can you please not pet her? And she's like, well, what is she doing that she's working? This is not a conversation you want to have with someone dealing with PTSD that has a service dog. So I was like, she is a PTSD traumatic brain injury dog. She does specific things for me for that. Can you please not pet her? And she's like, well, I have PTSD, can I pet her? I was like, no, sorry, and I'm like, I need to get this patient that's possibly dying to another hospital. Can you let me do my job? I transported a critical pediatric patient to the pediatric ICU. I had Star with me, and we were walking down the hallway, and two pediatric doctors walked past us, and the one said to the other, I'm just going to slap a vest on my dog and bring it to work. And these are pediatric doctors. The nurse that I was with said, did you hear that? And I was like, yeah, happens all the time. So if pediatric doctors are saying that, you can imagine what somebody else might say. Try just to ignore the dog. I know that's hard for some individuals, but if you really feel the urge to touch the dog or anything, make sure you ask before you do. The dog is always working, whether in a vest or out of a vest. And that's important to know because a working dog doesn't need to be in a vest. So there's no legal thing that says that they need to be in a vest. There was a veteran with a service dog that lived in New York and was crossing the street, and the dog was being petted by someone from behind him. Because the dog was being distracted, he stepped off the curb and got hit by a car. So that's how important it is to keep in mind. I've gotten asked by a lot of people what she does in the ambulance. So quickly, I'm going to show you the first video on the right that's going to start. This is a typical situation. We have a patient that's in the back there, and my partner is working with the patient. So she senses something's up front that she doesn't like. She stands up and she looks. And once she realizes it's okay, she'll turn back around, start down. I tell her, it's cool, lay down. She shakes it off, comes back, lays down. That's a very common day, or a very common situation for her to do. This other one, we're responding to a call. It's a very serious call. It's a rollover of a dump truck, and there's wires down.
The dump truck is near the intersection of 2 and Q.
I'm the passenger.
Power lines down.
She senses something is going on that she doesn't like. So you'll see she comes up. She looks towards me the whole time, like my area, because she's thinking something is going on.
There was nothing.
I'm going to show you how STAR works now. STAR front. Front. But this is really probably the part that everybody wants to see anyways. STAR sit. So tell her to sit, STAR side. When I tell her to side, she comes to my left side, side. So she'll keep moving until I get her to the right spot that I want her to be. STAR block. So this is the block position. She puts herself between me and the person that I'm talking to, or in an unsafe scenario, I'll put her in this position. A lot of times she does this on her own, so I don't have to tell her, but it's really, she's reacts the way that she needs to. STAR, brace. I injured my left hip overseas, so she helps me get down to the ground. Brace. So you can see I put all my weight on her to get down and up. Brace. So you can see it put all my weight on her as she looks at me. So when I put her in this position, she typically yawns, so we'll see what she does. STAR, cover. So this is the cover position. Yeah, did she? Of course, we know each other too well. There's, like I said, a number of ways that she can alert me. She could bark like she did earlier. She could rest her head against my leg, wag her tail to hit me. She could stand up, go into a reverse block. And I should be able to do anything over here, and she shouldn't move. That's with any command. She should stay there until I command her otherwise. STAR down. Down. Yes. Yes is a positive marker instead of good girl. So I can take her off leash. You know, I've been basically wandering around with her off leash this whole time. You should be able to step over her, and she shouldn't move. She should keep eyes on me unless she poses something as a threat. You should be able to step over her and accidentally kick her, and she shouldn't move. She's had a lot of nurses step on her tail. So, so anyways, she should stay right there until I command her otherwise. STAR front. When I call her to my front, she might stretch. Sit. She comes to my front. Side. 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 Yes. We get hooked up, we go back to where we need to go. So if I'm like in Walmart or something and in a stressful situation, down. She knows what's gonna come. So I could regroup by giving her this command, STAR, my lap. So she jumps to my lap and she just remains calm. And as you can see, she's licking me just to let me know that she's there and that everything's okay. I don't need to be worried. And as you can see, she's very calm. If she was not working and she was doing this, she'd be going nuts. So a lot of times, if I need this, I'll put my hands underneath her vest and feel her breathing so that I can calm down. Down. Good girl, yes. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you what a dog, is anybody afraid of dogs in here? You wouldn't have came if you were, right? So I'm going to show you what a dog looks like outside the vest as opposed to what she looks like, in the vest working. So if she comes up to you, you can feel free to pet her. STAR, free dog. Make friends. Make friends. So you can see she's pretty energetic. So this is how STAR, make friends, Make friends. She's gonna try and get your drink or the cocaine out of your purse. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So that's what a pet or an untrained dog would do, or a trained dog, I guess I should say. Star, front. Yeah, front. Sit. Good girl, stay. Star, front. Sit. Sit. Paw. Speak. 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 Yes, good girl. Down. Roll over. Okay, so those are some of the fun things that she does. Star, go to work. We say go to work. We put the vest on. This is her dress vest. It's our dress blues in the military. Brace to get up. Star, side. 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 Down. So you could see completely different dog, right? So Canines for Warriors is dedicated to you for life. So you get the dog originally. Hopefully she works for 10 to 12 years. She has to be recertified every 2 years. And we have to go to Florida to do it. So if she cannot pass the test, she retires at home with me. If she passes away, I go down and I get another dog. Same thing with if she retires, I go down and get another dog. And I only have to stay for 3 days as opposed to the 3 weeks because we know the commands. We just need to build a relationship. They hold 70 dogs on campus in the kennels there. Donald Trump actually paid for one of the kennels to have more, and they're trying to work on a $5 million project to build more so that they can put more veterans through each month, and dogs. I think 120 they want to hold on campus. A veteran just fills out the application, which is online, and they just have to have a doctor's note saying that you have PTSD, and they believe a service dog would help. And she's only in the vest when she's got a roof above her head, other than the house. She's still in control, and she understands she needs to be certain locations. And then she knows when she can be out of control. Thank you all very much for coming. I hope that you took something out of it. If you have any further questions, please go ahead and hang out, and I will answer them. I deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and from there, those were my 2 big deployments, and I was diagnosed with PTSD, traumatic brain injury. I went through all kinds of different treatment, counseling, medication, and that's how I got Star. She came from Canines for Warriors out of Point Vedra, Florida. They've graduated over 600 canine teams across the nation. And they're the biggest service dog organization for veterans post 9/11. So they're an amazing program if anybody wants to look it up.
The South Metro Regional Chamber of Commerce decided once they had met Captain B and his beautiful service dog Star that we would volunteer with Canine for Warriors, which is located in Florida, and the largest supplier and trainer of rescue dogs for service dogs, that we would sponsor a dog. And so we will be raising $25,000, which is the cost of one dog, that will then be partnered with a serviceman or woman who is in need. And so in the course of that whole registration of our commitment, the very sad shooting occurred in the Oregon district. So we determined to name the dog Dayton in memory of the 9 people who died, and in thanks to the first responders who saved everyone else. So we hope everyone in the community will contact the South Metro Regional Chamber of Commerce. The money is being collected by Farmers Bank, located in Miamisburg and West Carrollton, Farmers and Merchants. And we hope to raise the money maybe for 2.
It's not what people see every day. The bodies on the ground, you don't see the bodies hanging from bridges. Just accumulation of 20 years of seeing bad things. No matter how many times you try and talk to anybody, get over it. People just don't get it. PTSD, mild TBI, and multiple sclerosis. Marriage fell apart, lost all the house, the cars, all that stuff. If it wasn't for canines, I would be dead. I couldn't have asked for a better friend. No judgment. There's no get over it. There's just, I love you. Let me lick you in the face.